echoing. Try again.
I went ahead and pressed live. So for those of us who have joined us and are watching live, we're working on some audio issues right now with Barry.
Sorry.
No, don't apologize.
Right.
I can hear you now, though.
Good. And I can hear you. How's the sound quality?
Good. Yeah, no, it's good. You've certainly had worse. Let's put it that way.
Good.
How are you?
I am good, thank you.
Excellent.
Enjoying a sunny day, although I hear Chicago is doing pretty nicely right now, too.
It's incredibly beautiful out right now.
Excellent.
Compared to, what was it, 2 weeks ago? Yeah, we're doing pretty good. It's 51 degrees here, Barry.
Why did I lose you? Try something here.
You lost me again?
And now you're back. I don't know if it's it's on my side.
It's I'm guessing it's the AirPods.
Yeah, so I was wondering. I'm just doing the one right now, so it seems to be pretty clean.
Problems with AirPods, not only in Ecamm Live, but in Zoom and in what was the other one? Not Skype. Whatever. I always have problems with them dropping out. And my AirPods, they're AirPods Pro Gen 1, but my AirPods decide that I never want to be on a phone call longer than 1 hour. Right around 1 hour, every time, without fail, they start cutting out.
Oh, wow.
Yeah.
Well, hopefully this will be okay. I should make a point of getting an actual pair of headphones next time I'm in Chicago.
I have grown to hate my AirPods. It took about a week or two, and then I decided I hated them.
Yeah, I mean, I have zero problems. This is the only time I've had it, but I use it almost exclusively for listening to music or podcasts off of my iPhone. So
yeah, see, and I think
the connection there is better.
I think that's different. It's that what they were designed for. I think they're great, but when you start to do this through the browser type stuff like we're trying to do now, it just yeah. And to be fair, the phone calls I'm on where they start to cut out are this type of thing through the browser and yeah.
Sure.
So, yeah.
Cool.
Annoying. So, I imagine you're working today. You don't have the day off, right? So, we have
You are correct.
Yeah, we want to make sure
usually Fridays are quiet.
Okay.
Yeah.
We don't want to keep it too long.
No, I'm good. And, U.S. headquarters is Chicago time zone. So, it's 1 o'clock there, so most of the folks have said, it's after lunch on a Friday. We're done.
Excellent. All right, I'm going to do this and see if I can... Nope, that didn't work.
Is there any way I can see... Should I have YouTube up in the background or anything for chat? Or you have that? Or
you should be able to see it in the browser window if there is anybody there to chat. Okay. I see somebody watching us. Hey, folks, how you doing?
Is that through YouTube or is this through the
It's
guest
YouTube.
spot?
Yeah.
Oh, okay.
No, through your browser. You're joined in through this link I sent you.
Right.
I believe you can see the chat as well through there. There's nothing in it right at the moment, but I believe you can.
Sure. Oh, maybe.
Let me double check here. Because I have a completely different interface than you do.
Don't hit settings when I'm in the browser.
Yeah, show viewer comments is on for you, so you should be able to see it.
Weird. I do not.
I know Eric has seen them in the past.
Well, it wouldn't connect in Safari, but that could be me with some of my ad blocking settings or something. So I switched to Firefox because I don't have Chrome installed. And got me in real easily, so that's good.
Oh, it
Oh, I do
did.
see
Well,
something.
that could be part of the problem too. Hey, Brett.
Yeah.
Hello, it's me. That's awesome. Hello, it's
Oh,
me.
there it is.
Oh,
Yeah, now it came up.
hey.
Hey,
I
Brett.
meant to change the here, let me see if I can fix this. I meant to change that. Oh no. Oh well, that's all right.
Disappeared.
Yeah. They time out after 10 seconds.
Ah.
Man, you'd think I'd never used this software before. Oh, here we go. Placeholder comment overlay. There we go. That's a
There we go.
placeholder. I wanted to see if I could adjust the. Oops. Whoa, don't do that. Don't do that, Mike. Forget it. I meant to change the background of the comments so that they're more visible,
Sure.
and I forgot to do that. All right. Cool. So, just a quick rundown. I kind of texted you some information before.
Right.
The rough bullet points I was thinking for the Vision Pro discussion, but I'm going to open things up with a little for Mac Eyes Only update. I have an update on the migration episode from last time,
Sure.
and just a fun little Mike snarky update, as I often do. So yeah, we'll have the normal intro stuff, quick little update explaining why you're here and not Eric, and then quick Macstock update, and then we can go into the Vision Pro stuff.
Nice.
Yeah, I completely, as I told you in texting, I completely dumped the news segment because I looked at the news and said,
Yeah.
The most exciting thing in the news to me was that, here, we'll even talk about it right now. Before we start recording the show, we'll entertain Brett and possibly Martine if he shows up. The most interesting news story this week was that Apple actually updated the Windows iCloud apps.
Oh, wow.
Like, they released officially released Apple Music, Apple TV. They kept iTunes around and overhauled the iCloud interface for Windows. I'm like, I just assumed it was all dead, quite frankly.
Yeah, because I remember a while back I tried integrating that with one of my work laptops on Windows, and it was kind of janky, and I'm like, there's no real value to me. So I never really bothered. So yeah, like you, I assumed it just kind of died on the vine.
Just assumed it died, right? And
Yeah.
no, they actually updated it all this week. They released all new version. Now, I was going to comment, the one thing I wish they would release for Windows, because this is something that has not really been easy to do on Windows ever, is Apple Photos. I think it would be great if they released a version of Photos for Windows.
Yeah, that is strange.
Managing pictures on Windows just is not a great experience. And the best solution I ever found was from Google, and it was called Picasa. And
Okay, I
then,
remember that. Yeah.
yeah, Picasso is very similar to iPhoto, and I think that's why I liked it.
Sure.
But yeah, it just, well, I think it's because there's no consistency. I think that's really the problem. You know, you talk
Right.
to any single Windows user and ask them how they're managing their photos, and you will get a different answer from every single one who replies to you. There's just no good way to manage photos on Windows, including the Microsoft, I don't even know what they call it, the Windows Photos app or whatever they call it. It's just not a great solution. So,
No, and what was the Apple one before Photos?
iPhoto.
Aperture.
Oh, well, Aperture, yeah. Yeah, I mean,
I
Aperture would
liked
be
Aperture.
great. There's, and there's lots of great open source solutions. Aperture, like you said, is great. Of course, there's Adobe's Lightroom. You know, there are solutions for managing photos that are very good, but it's just that consistent point of entry type solution that the Mac has and that the iPhone has. And again, Android, same situation. There just isn't that consistent experience. So you can leap right into managing your photos and then decide later, oh, I need whatever, Lightroom or
Right. Something hardcore. Yeah.
something hardcore. No, hardcore in photos. That's not a
Okay, poor choice
conversation
of
we
words.
intend to have. Yeah. All right. So, being cognizant of your time, and thank you very much for joining us, Barry. That's awesome. Glad you could be here today. I think we'll go ahead and get started. So I'm gonna
All right.
do what I'm normally doing while Eric and I jaw. We will avoid the 3-hour extravaganza that Eric and I often do. Edited
Yeah,
down
if you hear my
to, by the
stomach
way.
rumbling, then you'll probably know it's time for me to go.
Right. Well, I try to edit it down to like an hour and a half, maybe 2 hours, but I lop a lot out of those
Sure.
when I edit them down for the podcast. Okay, start. Oh, shoot. Okay. Once again, Mike forgot to start his recorder over here. So that makes it very easy to write down the start time. 10 seconds in.
Looks like we have a couple more viewers.
Yeah. Oh, hey, wow, Brian and Martine. It really pays off to actually put out on social that we're doing this.
Yes, it is.
Hey, Martine.
Hey, Dirty Pony.
Hey, Brian. Yeah.
Brian.
Wow, great crowd.
Yeah.
3 of my favorite people. Very cool. All right. Well, we will get started then. Let me see if I can clear this frog out of my throat. Better? Maybe not.
Sounds good.
Sounds good. All right. Here we go. You like your name down there? See?
Yeah, it's very
Barry
cool.
Fulk. Yeah, we got it. See, it pops up down there at the bottom.
Oh, outstanding.
Yeah.
The whole screen.
Yeah, there you go.
Bring it back. No, I'm kidding.
Bring it back. There we go. Deservedly so.
Well, that'll give me a chance to, bring them up when I need to.
Oh, no. Keep. That's I know I already mentioned the Vision Pro, but that's the surprise, right?
Yep.
Cool. All right, we'll get started. I had to vamp just long enough to make it a reasonable number to start. All right, here we go. In 3, 2, 1. It's For Mac Guys Only, episode number 425 for February 9th, 2024. A Vision for the Future. Hey everyone, welcome back to For Mac Guys Only, the show for the Mac community. Hey everyone, welcome back to For Mac Guys Only, the show for the Mac community, where we share our thoughts and opinions on current Mac news and events. And joining me to talk about his future vision is my good friend and longtime contributor to For Mac Guys Only, Barry Fulk. Hey Barry, how you doing?
Hey, Mike. Good. Thanks so much for having me on. I have lots of opinions to share today.
Ooh, I like opinions, Barry. Now, for everyone who is joining us live in the chat room, hey, how you doing? We record For Mac Guys Only live on the YouTube. On YouTube, the second and fourth Friday of the month. And if you would like to come hang out, ask questions, and be part of our live studio audience, be sure to subscribe to the show at youtube.com/FMEO TV. And if you are joining us live, I'll be keeping an eye on that chat room too. So if you have any questions or comments as we move along, go ahead and leave them there in the chat room, and we'll try to address it here on the show.
Wonderful.
Well, we did begin our migration episodes last time with the big Evernote migration, and I have a couple quick updates on that. But due to a scheduling conflict, we're going to be pushing off our next migration episode until next week. Yes, you heard that right. We're actually going to have not 1, not 2, but 3 episodes this month, because filling in this week, we have that special bonus episode featuring Barry, who is joining us to share his early experiences with Apple's Vision Pro. Now, first, though, I do have a couple quick for Mac OS Only updates. There it is, the Vision Pro. I have a couple quick for Mac OS Only updates, including an update on my personal migration from Evernote. As I mentioned, I plan to cancel my subscription before the renewal hit. The renewal was due to hit on Groundhog Day, of all days. And of course, I got the obligatory, please don't go emails. But one of them included some important information for anyone else who might be thinking about canceling their plan as well. And it is this. Evernote free accounts now have 50 notes and 1 notebook. Starting on December 4th, I guess that was last December 4th, free users have a maximum of 50 notes and 1 notebook per account. That's the new rules for free users on Evernote. Now, here's the important part if you are looking to cancel Evernote like I did. If you are currently at or above this new limit, you can still view, edit, export, share, and delete your existing notes and notebooks. You just can't create new ones. So those 800 something notes that I had and the, 2,000 whatever notes that Eric had, you can still access those even after you cancel your account. You just can't create new ones because you're well past that limit of 50 notes and 1 notebook. Now, I wanted to be sure to share that because if they stick to this, then there isn't really a great rush to export your notebooks before you cancel your plan. Now, I'll also mention that that particular email invited me back at a 25% off discount. And then later, of course, right? And then later, when I disconnected all my devices, except for the 2 that are now allowed, and that's important too, you're limited to 2 devices to sync to your plan, then I was offered a 40% off discount. And 3 days later, 60% off. And I just figure, hey, at this rate, maybe I'll get the next year free. So
I wouldn't be surprised. And it's, it's unfortunate in a way. And I've been listening to your saga over the last couple episodes. It's been interesting because I faced that a while back with Evernote, and I don't remember exactly. I mean, it was at the time when I first started using it, it was pretty new. And I love the fact that it was cross-platform and essentially it was free. And I know that's not sustainable. I don't have a problem with them charging.
No, of course. Yeah.
But my use case in my own personal use really became more devices, but all within the Apple ecosystem. And at the point they upgraded Notes to be a more full-fledged client, and I forget exactly the script someone had to export it. I'm like, I'll give it a shot. And it worked well for me. But my use cases are fairly straightforward. They're just basic notes. I don't have a lot of structure. So it worked out well. And I was kind of sad. But Evernote, I don't know if you talked about it, but I felt they lost their way a little bit in when they had some growing pains. And it's too bad. I really did enjoy it for what it was. But at this point, unfortunately, I've moved forward. I don't see a compelling reason to go back.
Exactly. And if you were listening, you heard me say pretty much the same thing. Evernote has become a repository for notes that I've created in the past, but I'm not really using it to create new notes. Mm-hmm. So to almost double my subscription plan, and I as you said, look, it does cost money to run these things, and I happily resubscribe every year, but for what it is, to go from $69.99 a year to the $129.99 a year, I couldn't justify it anymore. Not when, as you pointed out, Apple Notes is so much better than it used to be. And I found Joplin as a great analog to be that repository for my notes. So, yeah. I think I mentioned this a moment ago. One other thing that they didn't mention in the email is that you are limited to, no, I didn't mention this. You are limited to 2 syncs per month, according to one pop-up that came up on my screen, which I just thought was a little ridiculous. Yeah. I mean, 2 devices, great, I get that, but 2 syncs per month? Well, I found that out when I selected devices to disconnect. Woof. So
Ooh,
you
that's
can't
not good.
you can't say that they aren't doing everything that they can to convince people to stick with the paid plans. Now, the second update I'm kind of excited about. This is another project of mine and Barry's too, in a way, right? I mean, with the Midwest Mac Barbecue, this is very near and dear to For Mac Guys Only's heart, and that's Macstock. Yes, Macstock will be back this year with our 8th in-person event. And while I can't give all the details quite yet, and we do have a few folks in the chat room who are chomping at the bit to get those details, I can share the dates. So if you are interested in attending Macstock this year, be sure to mark the dates, July 12th through the 14th, 2024. Mark those on your calendar. And to be absolutely the first to learn when this year's weekend passes go on sale, which will be very soon now, be sure to subscribe to the Macstock newsletter or follow Macstock on Mastodon at tooting.ninja/@MacstockExpo. Oh, and the lineup of folks who have already reached out to me to present this year, I can already tell that this will be a year of talks not to be missed. Some
Yeah, I'm sure it's stellar.
really great presenters have already reached out to me and said they wanted to take the stage at Macstock this year. So super, super exciting.
Nice.
Yeah. Now, I don't think we really have any news to cover this week, Barry, but I think it's fair to say that what we have to talk about is pretty newsworthy.
Absolutely.
Yeah, Apple announced the Vision Pro last summer, and they went on sale, or I guess you could actually get them in your hands. What was it? February
The
2nd?
second
Was it the
was the
2nd?
arrival date. Yep. And in the 19th of January is when they did the pre-sale. So being a good little Apple person, I got up at 5 a.m. Pacific time and put in my order. It was the smoothest experience I think I've had ordering an Apple product. The site went up pretty much right at 5. I was using my iPhone. My experience, fortunately, was very smooth, and I know that wasn't the case across the board, but it really was, doing the face scan a couple of times where you looked up and down and sideways, and they asked a couple other questions. The one I was worried about was the prescription lenses because I tend to wear contacts, and I do the monovision thing, which if you say you have monovision, they're kind of like, eh. And I'll talk a little bit more about how I've worked around that. But within 4 minutes, I was back to bed and had my order in place. And I even saw the email come across right away confirming that, along with you will upload your prescription later, which was good because I was worried if I had to do that, that could potentially be a problem. And, it's a whole new area. I'm not very familiar with AR, VR headsets. I've used, I think, the Oculus, one of them, a couple of times. In fact, I may have been at one of the Midwest Mac barbecues. I think DJ George brought it. And then that's about it. So I was kind of going in cold to what really the whole experience was going to be. And the whole vision of prescriptions and contacts was definitely something I had no idea what to expect.
Yeah.
But
I think that's fairly unique to Apple, isn't it?
Yeah. But it's, just like any experience, Apple tries to make the hardware and software integration really smooth. And, once I got the order in, I was able to relax, go back to bed for a little bit. And then it was a waiting game. And it was something, and this is what's different. I mean, I shouldn't say it's different. It's been a while since I've been so excited to get a new device and try it out with a lot of unknown things, a lot of open questions. How will I use it? What will it be for me or others? And that in itself was exciting. I really felt this kind of joy that I haven't felt in a while of, okay, when's it coming? It's like Christmas, and what's it going to be able to do? And I remember the iPhone. I wasn't an adopter that first year. I was still a BlackBerry person. I'm sorry. Am I allowed to say that?
You are absolutely allowed to say that. I wasn't an early adopter either. And
Yeah.
you know what I did early adopt on. I still have
that is actually true.
My Google Nexus 1 is sitting right over there on the desk.
Yeah. So I didn't have that initial excitement with the iPhone, but I jumped in on the iPhone 3G. I had the iPad was definitely a day one experience, and I certainly enjoyed it, but partially because a lot of the use cases I don't think had been fully established. It was a device that I enjoyed reading on, but I didn't use it a lot for productivity. That has
Hmm.
changed significantly over the years, which is kind of how I look at the Vision Pro. That my iPad, which was a portrait reading device, is now a landscape productivity device. I have the keyboard, and the trackpad that's built in. Although I rarely use that, I like the touch interface. But it is my main driver. If you see me around town or at work, I always have my iPad with me. I love it. So I'm curious again where this is going to go. It's only week one into the world of Apple Vision Pro, but I do want to talk about what I am doing today and kind of the whole setup experience, out of the box kind of a thing. But yeah, it's fulfilled its journey to give me joy and excitement in technology, and I kind of missed it, and I'm kind of glad that it still can happen. That's for me is really the one of the best things about the device is how much I enjoy using it.
That's interesting that you say that because it's been several years since we've had a really new and exciting product from Apple. I think the Apple Watch was probably the last real new and different thing. And even that didn't
Hmm.
feel quite as exciting as if we think back, the iPhone did,
Right, and
when that came out.
you know, you know me well, Mike. I like to be, first on the street. Plus, I also have tremendous FOMO if I don't. So I literally have had the watch arrive on day two for some of the models, and I'm like, "Oh, I'm missing out, stressed. But yeah, the watch was really nice. I enjoyed it, but to me, it was kind of like a subset of the iPhone, right?
Right,
Initially, it was going to be,
right.
notifications, but it does, each of these technologies drives new things. And I was actually talking about this with some other tech friends, and they're like, "Well, what did you do with the watch when you first got it?" I'm like, "Well, I turned on notifications, which is nice.
Yeah.
I wasn't a watch wearer, so I had to get used to having something on my wrist, and it was nice having the time calendaring events. But then I was looking for a good email client that could show me like a quick thumbnail. That's how I discovered Spark. I believe they were the first third party to really come out with a full featured mail client that worked also on the watch. And that was a nice discovery on many levels. I love the client, and I really enjoyed that experience of basic triaging. I'm not going to respond and type on my watch necessarily, but I can respond if I want to. And it was just these use cases built over time. And I think most of us will agree that fitness has become one of the primary drivers of the watch. And I really do enjoy that. The steps involved, the closing the rings, they really have accelerated my use of kind of keeping tabs of my own body, so to speak, because I have this health monitoring device on me most of the day.
I was literally just nagged to make sure that I was not missing out on my activity for the day.
There
And
you
it's
go.
it's one of those things, once you get started, they look, Apple understands gamification, right? I
Hmm.
mean, I have now hit my move goal 1,894 days in a row. And I know there are folks who've hit it longer, but if I miss it now, I,
Right.
I'm I'm going to be
I have
crushed.
yeah, I've gone outside and walked around if I'm close enough to closing a ring or steps or something because I want to hit that 10,000 step mark or whatever it is.
Right.
And a day like today, where I'm generally just working out of my apartment here, I don't get up. I'll get 2,000 to 3,000 steps. So again, I'll be like, oh boy, I'm sedentary. I better get out of the house. So it's uh, it's been really good. Martine got his first Apple Watch when he was in Chicago for Macstock. Excellent, Martine. And Brett's, yeah, good for you. He was a day one adopter on the Apple Watch as well. And that's it, right? It's exciting, and it's also the ability to share those experiences that I enjoy. It's the old days of the App Store.
Hmm.
There's only, well, I shouldn't say only a few. There's I think 600 or more native apps on Vision Pro, but it's like, what's new? And then I'm reading articles about them all the time or exchanging those ideas. And I'll have two that I want to talk about today. And that's exciting too, because even though the App Store itself as a concept isn't new, this specific platform is. And you're seeing creativity at multiple levels, new people getting in the environment, old time programmers adopting to it. I think that's really great. And what new what new idea will people come out with? I've already heard people talk about, I'm sorry, I'm jumping ahead, but there's new avenues of both revenue, but also ideas that can be leveraged by this device. That's cool in itself. Apple has once again created something that is not just for users, but developers. And I know they're a little bit of a contentious relationship sometimes with the developers, but they do give them a neat platform to build something. And I hope that is successful here.
Let's go back for a second to the purchase experience, because you mentioned getting up at 5 in the morning and completing a few questions. I presume on Apple site through Safari. Was this done on your Mac? Was it done on your phone?
So
How did
yeah,
you accomplish this and get those images taken that they wanted you to take to get started?
so you can do it on iPad, iPhone, or Mac. But the Mac, they said that you'd have to have a device with Face ID to do the scan. And I'm like,
Ah, okay.
even though I prefer to use the Mac for ordering other other upgrades in the past, I felt I better follow through on the iPhone on this one. So I did everything off my iPhone, and I double checked all my settings beforehand in the Apple Store app to make sure it had the proper address, the credit card information, which is going to use Apple Pay and the Apple credit card. And that's always a little bit nervous for me because I've had it where I've sworn I've set the shipping address to San Francisco and it ends up in Chicago. I've even had errors saying, "Well, that's not the right address. That's connected with the credit card," and then the process stops.
Mm,
This being the first rollout, no one knew how much inventory there was. I mean, I was
right.
stressed that I'm like trying to get through each screen as fast as possible. And fortunately, like I said, it was really smooth and no errors. Like I said, other than the warning about monovision, which I changed my game plan at that point, it really was smooth. So everything was literally done through the App Store app on the iPhone. And like I said, it took 4 minutes and I was done.
So, yeah, the monovision, you kind of hinted at this. So, are you saying if you tell them you have monovision that you are advised not to buy this?
The monovision, so out of the box, so to speak, won't give you a good experience.
Mm,
So they encourage you to either use readers if you can, depending upon your nearsighted or farsighted. So for me, I'm nearsighted, and I didn't know what monovision was 10 years ago, and had my annual eye appointment. And being at the ages that I am at this point, sometimes I would have trouble reading close or far.
right.
And so I thought I'd have to get bifocals or something like that. And I was introduced to this. He's like, with contacts, you can have one eye, which in my case is my left eye, have a very weak prescription. That eye will be dominant for reading up close. And then my right eye, which is my dominant eye in general, will be used for distance. And my
Mm,
brain will switch back and forth automatically. And I'm like, so we tested it at my doctor's, and after a few minutes, I'm like, well, I get a headache, or is this, going to work? And he's like, well, do you have a headache now? I'm like, no. He's like, then you're good. Apparently, it's only about 40 to 50% of males that can effectively use monovision, and it's higher for females. But I'm fortunate, no doubt about it, that it worked for me because it was like getting a new pair of eyes. I can drive no problem, see very clearly. I can have my phone right up in front of me and read tiny text, no problem. So that was neat. But it creates a problem with the Apple Vision Pro because it has a specific depth of field. So it's expecting it, and I forget exactly, it's like 1.1 meters, I think, is the distance, the focal point.
okay.
So I mentioned that to my optometrist, and he's like, you should be good just using your, because I do have glasses too for just general driving if I don't have contacts in. And so that's what we ended up going with. And that's why I ended up submitting into into the system when it asks. So they send you a separate email, completely separate from the ordering process, and then you upload it to, I forget if it's to Apple or to Zeiss, and they share the information back and forth.
So, as a person who wears contacts, are you required to get the lens inserts for the Vision Pro, or can you just use it with your contacts and be done with it?
Yeah. So if I'm just using contacts and they're generally speaking normal, for distance, you'll be able to use the Vision Pro without any problem and without inserts. You might want readers if you only use, reading glasses, but no contacts or glasses otherwise. That I don't have. But I've found that if I put in on the Vision Pro with my current contacts, it is blurry for my left eye.
Ah, okay.
And so that was a bit of a problem. And I'm like, well, if I take out my contacts and I put in these are the inserts, by the way, they look like little monocles,
Ah,
and
yes.
they are magnetically attached into the Vision Pro. It's a really nice little satisfying click as it goes in, and it's relatively easy to pull out, but you can feel it magnetically tug before it removes itself. So it's secure. But I've found that I can kind of cheat and take out one, and then let my contacts do their things, but I only need one to help me overcome my vision, and that works really well. So during the day, because I like to keep the contacts in as I'm doing regular work, I can use one one insert, and every time you change those inserts, the Vision Pro will notify you. You've put them in, you've taken them out, and I was worried that maybe it wouldn't let me do one because you actually have to scan. As part, again, I was a little bit jumping around here, but as part of the setup process, you have to scan a QR code that's attached in the box that says, yes, these are Barry's inserts and they have this prescription. Let's see if I can bring it up on the screen here. But it's just a little code that you scan with the Apple Vision Pro, and it confirms, okay, this is Barry's inserts, and then it moves forward. So again, it's a longer and more arduous setup process than other devices, but understanding there's the why. And I think some of this may even be like the prescriptions had to be from a US provider. They had to be current, I think within 12 months. I'm sure there's some legal reasons that's required. So, but other than getting kind of past that initial portion, it works great. And the vision itself is absolutely stunning. And I'm sure we'll talk about that in a moment.
Yeah, in fact, I was just going to, nice lead in, Barry, because I was just going to ask about that. So you mentioned the scanning the QR code to assure that those are the right inserts for the Vision Pro and what have you. But what about the rest of the out of the box experience and that initial setup? Being an Apple product, I'm sure it's an amazing unboxing experience. I don't know if you took pictures or video, but it's an amazing unboxing experience. But the setup must be pretty smooth as well, no?
Yeah, I thought so. I mean, the biggest shock, and I think a lot of people have commented about this online, is just the sheer size of that initial box. Much like the first Apple Watch, they went all out on the packaging. It's beautiful. It's very well designed. It's very Apple-like, and it's a giant shoebox, right? And it comes in its own outside cardboard or I guess cardboard box, and then you get the big white Apple box inside. You lift it up, and then there it is. It's presented to you in all its glory. So it's really nice. And then underneath it had the different pieces: the extra headband, the charging case or charging cord, all the related accessories. I ended up getting 4 boxes that day, and one was the Vision Pro, one was specific for the lenses, one was the traveling case, which came separately, which is also fairly big, and then I bought a battery clip from Belkin during the.
Oh, smart.
Actually, yeah,
Smart.
yeah.
I've seen people stick them into the headbands and all kinds of stuff.
Oh,
I'm like, well, that can't be comfortable.
No. And I mean, a lot of times I can just slide the battery pack into my pocket, but this one gives me a little extra security because it's an interesting design choice because it's not quite MagSafe, right? You have to kind of clip and snug in that attachment from the battery cord into the Vision Pro. And I'm always a little worried that if the battery falls, it's heavy enough that it could yank pretty hard on the side.
I would think so.
I don't think it'll knock it off your head, but it could. So just thought additional security. I mean, we all know the price is not cheap on this thing, and I am hesitant to pay another 400 or whatever for Apple Care. This might be the exception to the rule for me.
Do you
Just because
have the 90 days to get Apple Care like you do
yeah.
with the Mac or what have you?
Yeah, I think all the rest of that's the same. You could do month to month, which I believe is 25 per month, or you have a choice to go in and
That's a lot.
just because, yeah, and the cost of repairs is still very expensive. I forget what it was. It was like $2,200 if you break the glass and you need it repaired without Apple Care. And I'm like, you're almost buying a new one at that point.
Well, no wonder Apple
So,
doesn't include a clip.
yeah, they're
They're
encouraging.
hoping you'll pull it off your head. No, not having seen this happen plenty of times myself, having it pull off your head if the battery drops is probably the least of my concern. I'd be more worried about damage to the cord itself.
Yeah, right.
Yeah.
And it's interesting to see again some of the design choices. I mean, it turns out that you can remove the cord from the battery side if you have like one of those little SIM insert clips. It'll pop it out. But in general, it's all pretty well attached. So I'm sure that there's some design trade-offs here for security, so it's a secure connection because there's no built-in battery in this version of the device. So
Right.
you have to have that. And and then again, I didn't want to spend another $200 for a second battery, so you can just use an external battery pack that's got USB-C. That should work. And frankly, this entire week, I've been always plugged in just because I didn't want to think about battery life because I'm close enough to outlets. But we'll find out next week when I'm on a plane.
Now, what about the rest of the setup experience? So that's the hardware. How about the software side of things? Getting it set up and getting it configured for you. Let's be honest, you're the sole user of this device.
Correct.
It's not really intended to be a shared device. So setting it up for Barry, how did that work?
Yeah, and they give you the option right away to do some of the setup through your iPhone. And that passed through certain things like the Wi-Fi credentials. You're basically in a similar way, like you're doing Migration Assistant, or you're doing that, when you're switching from one phone to the next, where you can have them do direct connections and pass their data. So I started it, and this is one that I can only give you half the story because it passed through some, and then it just kind of hung, and it just
Oh,
sat there spinning. So after a while, I could see nothing was updating. So I'm like, all right. So I started over again. I never had to re-enter in my Wi-Fi. So that part somehow got passed through the device. So it wasn't a hard reset. It was just, restart this piece of it. But I was never able to get the iPhone to acknowledge that I had a new device. And so, I'm holding them together and I'm like, well, this is kind of odd. So I kind of had to do a manual install, which really wasn't a big deal, right? Because this is a new device. I don't even know if it allows you to transfer iPhone apps over, but I did have to then type in my Apple ID and password all virtually on the virtual keyboard. And that experience is okay. I
yeah.
will, there's certain things that they'll have to work on to make it a lot easier. You can't just touch type and do this. It's mostly peck, peck, peck. Siri does work remarkably well. I will give them credit, and I'm sure that's because they have the microphones very close to your mouth. Certain things, though, work super well, and that's like the numeric keypad. A lot of times you might have to put in a 6-digit code for multi-factor,
Yeah.
and this is one of those fun little things where it just pops up kind of right in front of you. I'm like, tap, 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 done. And that was easy because you hear the feedback as you press the numbers, and it's a large numeric screen, so it was easy to enter it in, a lot easier than the keyboard.
Yeah.
So that once I got past that, then it's pulling over, my starts to synchronize the basics. I was on version 1.0 at the time, and I think 1.2 had just been released that day, but I hadn't updated it yet because I want to play. And I just thought certain things seemed to be a little bit off. It wasn't synchronizing my keychain. It didn't bring across messages. And I'm like, it felt like a brand new device in that respect. And I'm like, but I'm logged into iCloud.
Mm-hmm.
So the settings app, and again, most of the Vision OS is very similar to iOS. So you'll have no trouble navigating. So I went to settings and then to my account, and then I go to iCloud, and then you see all the apps that can synchronize. And I think other than mail, they were all off. That was strange. Now, was that due to my borked setup? Quite possibly. Was it a 1.0 thing? Could be. That I don't know. But turning them on, then all of a sudden you saw data just flow into the device and things started to act like a more traditional synchronized iOS device.
So you've mentioned 1.0, 1.1, 1.2. Now, I presume you're talking about Vision OS 1.
Correct. Yeah, I'm
Whatever.
sorry, 1.00,
Are,
1.01, yeah.
Oh, okay. That's what I was going to ask because I just saw an article yesterday and I was going to bring this up a little bit later, but just very briefly, they mentioned testing the beta of visionOS 1.1. You're referring to 1.0.1.
Correct. Yeah, sorry
Okay.
about that.
Gotcha.
And in people that know me, I'm the fool that lives on the edge and puts beta on any device as soon as it's available, right? My phone, my iPad, I don't care. I've bricked watches. So the watch I don't do anymore, but the general benefit I feel is less. I cannot help myself with the phone at WWDC. And as soon as they release it, I'm just refresh. Come on.
You're a wild man, Barry Fulk.
I'm not necessarily the smartest person, but usually you can recover if need be. With the Apple Vision Pro, not there yet. I have a developer account. I could do it, but I'm not comfortable doing it. And I think it's too early days. Apple Vision Pro is in the Vision OS is remarkable, but it's still pretty
Buggy.
early and pretty buggy. Yeah.
Yeah. See, and I would think that the Vision Pro of all devices would be the one that begs for you to put beta versions on it. That you really, you want to know what that next version is bringing.
Right.
And I think one of the things I've heard, and again, I intended to bring this up later, but one of the articles mentioned that a limitation of the Vision Pro, and again, we'll dig into this a little bit in just a bit, but one of the limitations is being able to just use it as a single screen with your Mac versus apparently the folks who are wandering around Apple's campus using it with two screens on their Mac. So, there's updates coming to it. And so when you hear about these updates, I would think, oh my gosh, I want to go ahead and put that beta on there. But
yeah,
not quite
it's probably
ready
just a
yet,
matter of time. Yeah. Because I've heard stories, and again, I believe this is also addressed in beta 1.1, is that if you do truly brick your Apple Vision Pro, you have to bring it into a store.
I've heard that.
So,
yeah.
And again, I'm very fortunate. I've got Apple stores all over the place. I could drive to Apple in 40 minutes if need be, but I still prefer not to do that.
Well, as I understand it, yes, you have to have either bring it into the Apple store or have a developer account and purchase this $299 dongle,
right?
Which is probably nothing more than a USB to USB-C cable or something. I don't know what it is, but
yeah,
it's
there's
expensive.
a speaker thing. Yeah, and I looked into it, and I'm like, maybe I don't know if I even need that to install the betas. I don't know if you can do it over the air or if it requires that. I haven't even
I don't know
down that path.
I don't know about that, but yeah. Apparently, if you want to reset it, you need this little device, this $300 device. I guess at only 10% the cost of the Vision Pro, it's a deal.
Absolutely. Yeah. I mean, I joke about, here, Apple, take my money. This one was harder. I mean, when they first announced the price and we were all kind of guessing $29.99, and I'm like, ooh, there's another 500. I was just, I knew I was going to get it, but they gave me a good runway to save for it, which I appreciate, but it's a stinger.
Well, save for it. And, nicely, you can use, as you mentioned, the Apple Card to spread those payments out over a year. So you don't need that big nut to chew on right up front.
Exactly. And, it's, would I, and I know we're jumping ahead here too, but it's like, is is it worth it? Right? It depends. It really depends on what your use cases are. Do you enjoy new technology? Do you mind dealing with the rough edges of a new device? And I think a lot of your listeners, Mike, will definitely be in that camp. And again, it goes back to what I was saying at the beginning. The joy of something like this is well worth it. I look forward to, hey, I'm caught up at work. It's 8 o'clock. I want to put these on and just immerse myself.
All right,
And
save
that,
that thought.
yes,
Save
okay,
that thought. We're gonna get to that in just a bit. One thing that's been kind of bandied about in the articles I've read is whether or not it's a comfortable experience, and that's part of
hmm,
the out of the box experience. It's part of setting it up. Apparently, as I understand it, there are two different headbands that
yep,
come with it. Right? That it's not. It comes with one, and the other's an extra. I believe it comes with both. Right?
yes, correct, yeah. So these are the little light shield seals that come in. There's two different thicknesses, and then of course there's when you scan your face, it's also determining the whole mask. I'm not sure what that's called because there are different sizes. We have different size faces, so they want it to be as comfortable as possible.
You have a different
I,
size face.
yes, I do.
Yeah,
Um,
I'm just that's just a bad joke. Uh, so, how about wearing it for lengthy periods of time? Do you find
yeah.
it a little too heavy, or are you good with wearing it for extended sessions?
So it's, the first day is probably not a fair comparison because you're so excited to have something new. And I was using I think they call it the solo knit band. That's the one that just goes on the back of your head, stretches, and there's a little dial to tighten it up. Um, it is noticeable. There's no, I'm not going to hide that fact. You feel the weight on, on your kind of your cheeks and around your head. But I didn't feel it uncomfortable where I'm like, I can't wait to get this off. That never occurred to me. But I also was looking at, there is that second strap, which is the one that also has a loop that goes over your head to the back. So it kind of redistributes the weight a bit. I myself find it actually quite a lot more comfortable.
Mm,
So I
mhm.
switched to that the second day, and that's been my primary driver. Now, if you have vain moments, which occasionally I do, I'll switch to the one. If I just like at work, people love asking about it, and I like to show it off. So it's easy to slip on and off with a solo band. So I'll keep that on for shorter periods, but usually at night I switch to the larger one. And I've found over the whole week that I've been using it, it really isn't uncomfortable. It really is just a matter of you're aware it's there, but it's not to the point where you're like, oh, this is irritating. I get lost into what I'm seeing,
Mm, mhm.
and that kind of takes over. Now the question becomes, if you're using it all day, is that something that you'd be willing to do? I haven't done more than 5 hours at a time at this point, and I've found that to be perfectly acceptable.
Now, I don't know if there's anything else about the setup experience you want to cover, but I did want to ask, and I guess this kind of ties into it. With all you read about the Vision Pro leading up to the day that you got it into your hands, once it was set up, what was the first thing you tried?
I was just fascinated by basically what these environments have, which is the ability to have the entire field of vision be on the moon or at Joshua Tree, or there's a half a dozen other experiences, environments, I believe they call them. And I was just staring, mesmerized at how wonderful it was because no matter what direction I looked at, I would see new parts of this environment. And it's also, there are sound effects that can go with it, whether it's the wind whistling by, there's a bit of an echo when you're on the moon. It was
Wow.
transformative in that respect because I've never had that experience. I mean, no, I'm not on the moon, but this is about as close as I can get, and it was truly enjoyable. You look up and to the right, and then you see, the earth in the background, or the sun way out there, and stars all over. I mean, that's incredible. We've used apps, and we've done things like, they've had those. I forget what Google has, something where you can put your phone in there, it can render 3D, and it's nice.
Yeah,
But
Google
this was
Cardboard. Yeah,
Yeah,
Google
that's it.
Cardboard
Google
was, yeah,
Cardboard. Yeah, which
yeah,
I thought was pretty cool for something that was relatively inexpensive, and you just kind of put your phone into it and run the apps. This changes it. I mean, and I'll keep using the word immersion. It's that different, and because it's very detailed, it gives you three dimensions, and that I think is going to be something that will be truly a driver of what people want to see on there. I do want to circle back a little bit to this one last thing on the setup.
sure.
They do ask you to three times to look at dots on the screen, and then you have to pinch them when you're looking at them. They'll highlight, and then you just do your tap with your fingers to say yes, I'm seeing it. And it acknowledges it. It's setting up the eye tracking. The eye tracking itself is remarkable, and this is one of those things that it is science fiction. I just look at things and they automatically highlight, and the accuracy is stunning. I can look at a very small target point that with a mouse or a trackpad would be a relatively small target on a screen. And I look at it and there are other targets around it. And whatever I am looking at, it highlights with 100% accuracy so far for me. Again, I know there's a million cameras in this thing, but whatever they're doing, they nailed it. And that thing, it has to be part of the experience, because if it's just off a little bit, you're going to get user frustration, and you're going to be like, well, this is just taking too much time to select what I want. I haven't run into that yet. Now, your mileage may vary, right? Maybe I had a good setup experience. I don't know, but it does tell you that when you put on the Apple Vision Pro, if you're not properly setting it up, it may be too high or too low, it'll tell you to raise or lower the Vision Pro because it's calibrated to your eyes. So you don't have to do that setup every
In
time.
terms of where it is currently sitting on your face?
Correct.
Wow. Okay, that's pretty cool.
Yeah, so it does some sort of measurements to make sure that it's in line. And if I recall, the first time I inserted the eyeglass or the eyeglass inserts, I did have to do the calibration for that because it's now a different focal length, I guess, between the camera, the lens, and my eye. But it worked fine.
I suppose now I'm going to do the jumping around here. I suppose this is also part of the setup, but it's also part of the experience. You mentioned the immersion of it, and I understand how much you are immersed into your environment and how much you are not immersed into your environment is controlled by the digital crown that's on
Correct.
the Apple
On the
Vision
top
Pro.
right, yep.
But one thing that those around you experience are the personas.
True.
And they've received a lot of press, not all of it positive. And
No.
from what I've been reading, and I have an article I'll link to in the show notes, visionOS 1.1 is going to be bringing some improvements. But I do have to ask, of course, are you using it? And if you are using it, what feedback have you been getting? And how uncanny valley is it?
It's not even uncanny valley. It's just weird. It's good, and in certain ways, absolutely remarkable that it's looking inside. So, and I've been on FaceTime calls with other Vision Pro users, and so they'll let me see what I'm seeing or what they're seeing. Excuse me, so I can see myself in their screens. But certainly, watching things like blinking is spot on, right? So the accuracy of when you're blinking, it somehow can see your mouth even though it's below the actual Apple Vision Pro.
Yeah, I wondered
And
about
it's
that. Yeah.
pretty good. So I don't know if it's a combination of speech recognition and cameras, but it's pretty good. That is pretty impressive. But there are other aspects of it, like, well, my hair doesn't really move much, but if you have wavy hair and you move back and forth, it's a helmet. It never moves. I can see that it's not looking up there. So that's a
Sure.
little bit, that's where the uncanny valley part hits. So it's not quite, you expect a little bit of movement there. I've gotten more than one comment that I look about 25 because it kind of Botoxes your
So
face a little bit.
bonus
Yeah,
right there.
I'm like, oh, yeah, I'll take it. But I've also had two people say that if you're on a call with someone, after a while, you do kind of mentally adjust to this and it doesn't feel as weird you kind of accept it as a live avatar in a way that looks a lot like the person. And to your point, Mike, of the 1.1 version coming out, I'm sure that they saw that that was getting a lot of press, and they were
Yeah.
probably working on it already, but they think they're trying to accelerate that to make it a little bit more lifelike. It's not bad. The first experience, most people when they first see it is kind of a bit of a shock. I think this is something that people will just get used to pretty quickly over time. And from my point of view, I haven't incorporated it into work calls yet. Um, but I might start doing that soon just to get kind of what people think about it as opposed to not having it. Now, the company I work for reasons that I find strange, is 90% of people don't even turn on their cameras. And I'm like, that creates engagement. I almost always leave mine on unless it's like a 4 a.m. call.
Right.
So I'd rather have a persona than nothing.
They all have little pieces of tape over their cameras, don't they?
Probably. Yeah.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
and they just don't even bother. Which, it's fine.
Well, I have to say, from what I've seen, it looks fine to me. The
Mhm.
little bit I've seen of personas, it looks fine. Yes, it does look artificial to a certain extent, but I understand what you're saying, where people start to accept that that's just, I don't know, what you look like, for the
Yeah.
duration of that call or whatever. But look, it's leaps and bounds over the metaverse.
Mhm.
Remember when Mark Zuckerberg demoed his
Oh,
metaverse?
the
And we
weird
saw these
floating.
kind
Yeah.
of weird Nintendo Me like things with actual faces graphed. I'm like, oh my gosh, no,
Yeah.
please,
Yeah.
please do not make me go there.
No.
But this doesn't look so bad. It definitely looks like you're not talking to the real person. I think if
Right.
you were to suddenly switch to your persona here for the live stream that we're on, we would recognize that it's not actually
Yeah.
you, that it's a projection of you. But hey, we're on our way to help me Obi-Wan, right?
Right, exactly. I got to be a force ghost some point in the future, and you'll know it's me, right? It looks a lot like the person that they scan in. That's actually one of those slightly strange setup experiences, because you started when you're wearing Vision Pro, but then you literally take it off, turn it around so it's facing you. It says, put it out, arm's length, facing you, and then you can hear the commands being given. They'll walk you through a video before you take it off, and then they'll scan your face and they'll tell you to slowly turn to the right and look up and down and all that. It doesn't take long. And you can recapture it at any time if you don't like it. So they do at least give you a pretty easy way of trying it, especially because it will capture kind of your shoulder area. And so whatever you are wearing, you'll be always wearing a black t-shirt or collared shirt or whatever. So
And your hands
we'll
too, right?
yeah, it will bring in your hands. Yeah, you do the hands facing forward, and then you flip them back. And so it is pretty well done in my persona, that if I lift my hand up, it will bring it into the virtual environment pretty accurately.
That's very cool.
Yeah.
Okay, so continuing with that kind of out of the box experience and setting it up, and that immersion that you experience. You mentioned the number of apps. You said around 600. I remember it was initially around 200 or so, and
Yeah,
it's
maybe
rapidly
less than,
going
yeah.
up. I'm,
Sure.
I'm every day I'm reading about some great new app that's available for the Vision Pro, or I should say, some great existing app like Fantastical,
Hmm.
right?
Yeah.
Who's released a version for the Vision Pro. Have you discovered any killer apps that have given you that, oh my gosh, how did I ever live without it kind of feeling? Or are they really just extensions of what you've been using?
I'd say they're probably closer to the extensions, although I'll give one exception to that. And again, my uses mostly have been immersing myself into an environment or watching movies and things like that. So, Mike, I'm sure you'll appreciate that one of the first things I did after that was to use the Disney app, and they did a
Right.
fantastic job. I haven't actually played with the environments, right? You can sit in a land speeder, on Tatooine. You can be in Tony Stark's tower and watch movies within that realm. But I've found that the movies themselves are incredible. I am not a fan of 3D movies. I will actively not see them in a theater. I
Mm.
find them dark. I don't find real value into it. Apple Vision Pro has changed my opinion on that 100% because you have true screens, separate screens providing that data into your head, and the brightness is there, and you really feel that depth. And I was going to watch The Force Awakens in just a few minutes to see how it looked. 2 hours later, I'm watching the end of the movie. It was that impressive. It just grabbed me, and I just kept wanting to see more and more and more. Avenger Endgame, another great example of how you can see different things that you've missed before. You just didn't appreciate the scale. I mean, these screens are massive in the into your head, and even things like The Force Awakens, where Rey's inside the Star Destroyer and she looks down, and it feels like you are looking down hundreds of feet as opposed to just that's a cool scene. That changes how I'm emotionally attached to these movies. And I really think, again, this is a positive in a way that people can create, whether it's just a landscape or, the spatial videos that they've been talking about where it feels a lot more real because you have the depth. This is something that I really feel will be a driver. I knew about the capability, so I could go with my iPhone and go around town. I was walking around Chinatown in San Francisco, and I'm literally just walking down the streets, and you've got these lanterns up. It's, Chinese New Year coming up, and watching that back on the Vision Pro was unlike any other general video I've watched because I could feel everything around me, see everything around me. And the depth wasn't great, partially because it was dark out and they warned me that I need better light. But it changes how I looked at stuff. I pulled up every single panorama I've ever taken on my iPhone. And then you just look at it and it entirely across my field of vision. So then I can look to the left and see the winery at a vineyard. In front of me are the grapes themselves. And I look over here and you see the road that I came in on. And I'm like, that's cool. You just can't experience that on a flat monitor. And I'm not trying to be critical. It's just, it gives you a different experience. And again, like I said, it's very emotional because it feels like you're there and you're experiencing it again. And not just in a picture, but like, oh, I'm almost here. And it's remarkable. And this is, I think, what's going to grow. People are just going to go crazy taking videos. A good example is the Alicia Keys rehearsal room. Now they're using specialized hardware that you can see in the video to capture this, but she's right in front of you, the detail from her, and then they'll shift to a different camera and the sound changes based upon where she's singing. And you really are in the room with her. And I'm like, I've never experienced a video like this where it felt so personal. And again, I'm just like, I can't get enough of this. I mean, I really hope that, performers take advantage of this. I know Apple's talked a little bit that they'll do some sports events using this technology. I mean, I think one example was like, you could be in the dugout of a baseball game and see it from the player's point of view. I'm like, sign me up. Like right there.
Yeah.
I'm like, now I get it.
As long as it's a
courtside of the
Sox
basketball
game, right? It has to be a Sox game. Yeah.
Or the Giants. I can say that since I'm here right now.
Oh boy. Oh boy. I never thought I'd hear those words come out of your mouth.
No, you know me. I like all baseball. But you're right. The Sox definitely. But I can do that too. I can take spatial videos on my iPhone or with the Apple Vision Pro and watch them later. And I'm really excited about what I can capture. And some of it I think will be some really neat historical stuff, things I could take and, down the road, hopefully smaller and things, the device will be smaller and lighter that I can send to my daughter. I'm like, hey, here's what's going on in San Francisco. So she gets a good feeling for it and she can do the same thing. Here's Colorado.
Mm-hmm.
That really, I don't want to say it's a killer app, but that to me right now is where I'd totally focus my energies if I was a creator or even Apple, and I think they will.
So it's interesting because what you've just been describing was one of those initial sales points for the Vision Pro when they introduced it last summer, was that ability to re-immerse yourself into previously lived experiences, whether it's,
Mm-hmm.
a Christmas morning with the family or a family vacation or what, is lean very heavily into reliving those family moments. But I do have to ask, when you were shooting that footage of the street in San Francisco, does that require a special mode on your phone, or are you just shooting straight video with your
Yeah,
iPhone? How does
yeah,
that work?
and I can do straight video, but then it plays like it's flat on the Apple Vision Pro. So when you do, you have to have, I believe, the 15 Pro or Pro Max because it uses two of the lenses to create that depth.
Ah,
So
okay,
you have to do
cool.
a couple things. So you go into the video mode. You might have to even turn it on in settings. I don't know if it's on by default, but you have to turn it from portrait to landscape. It does require that. And again, that's how the lenses will be oriented to take it. And then there's a little button in the bottom right corner that looks like a little icon of Apple Vision Pro. And then you press that, then it will start recording in spatial video.
Ah,
And
interesting.
you lose the ability today to do any type of zooming. It's whatever, I assume 1x, because one of the cameras is probably that's all it can do.
Right,
So
right.
you
Yeah,
lose a
that makes
little bit
sense.
of some of that right today. Now, Apple being Apple, I wouldn't be surprised at all if the iPhone 16 comes with an extra lens just for doing this. And that would be great because, again, I love the Vision Pro, but I don't want to be taking it out on the streets all the time. But
Right.
I will always have my phone on me. So that would be really cool to capture. And again, vacation memories. And now I'm actively thinking whenever I'm somewhere, I want to take a spatial video. I've done it at, like, I go to bars or some live music and I'll do it there. It's a jazz trio I saw Monday. And I asked the guy, it's like, do you mind if I get fairly close to your guitar and watch you play? Because it was fairly well lit. And he was really cool about it. He's like, yeah. He's like, why? So then, the next 20 minutes, I'm explaining what Apple Vision Pro is. But he's like, oh, that's awesome. He's like, I can't wait to see it. I'm like, you're going to need an Apple Vision Pro to see it, at least for now. I mean, there's talk that Mark Zuckerberg is going to allow that in Oculus or the Quest, which I think is great, right? We want competition in this space. We want some level of cross compatibility where people can create on other devices that we can enjoy it.
Oh,
Um,
absolutely.
but
Yeah.
it, but again, you can see the clarity of him playing the guitars and his fingers moving around, and it isn't just a flat video. I mean, you can really see the difference of where his fingers are, where the strings are, where the guitar itself is, and it just pops. So it was really nice.
We didn't say these exact words, but it was an interesting piece I read on ZDNet, where the author June Wan said that the killer app isn't really any one app at all, but she wrote, it's the sum of its parts, the ecosystem that surrounds the Vision Pro. You agree with that?
I think that makes sense, right? Because you're taking so many technologies together that by their individual parts doesn't necessarily equate anything. Yeah, I forget the exact number of sensors and um, cameras in there, but it's incredible
A
how
gob.
much is
There's a
packed into
gob. It's
this,
a
right?
technical
Yeah,
gob. Yeah.
a gob and then some. And you know, then you put this device on that is now basically all encompassed around your head. So you got the screens in front of your eyes, you've got speakers on the side which sound really good. It really, I think that is a good way of putting it. Now, you still need to have something. So to your ecosystem point, right? It's the movies or the pictures, the apps. It is incredible, and I will talk about, if you don't mind, I'll circle back to one of the apps that I was going to mention. And this is not my typical things. I like games; they're fine. I'm not a
Yeah.
big gamer, but I'm
Right.
like I've been reading about. I think it's Super Fruit Ninja. I may have the name slightly off,
I think that's right.
and yeah, and it's one of
Yeah.
those games where on the iPhone you'd swipe your finger across the thing to slice the fruit or blow it up or whatever. They've reimagined the whole thing so you could do this all virtually. So instead of swiping my finger across the screen, it helps train you that you slice your hand across in front of you, because your whole field is this game, and it's so well done in terms of depth. So you have this master come out, and he's got a little pig as his pet or something. He explains the game and how to play. So you go through the basics. Well, at some point, I was in my bedroom because I had a little bit more open space, and I figured if I fell or something, it was padded and I'd be safe. All of a sudden, the pig just hops up on my bed. I'm like, it's a little touch like that I wasn't expecting, but it gave me a little bit of joy. I'm like, that's cool. He's just sitting there watching. And then as I'm slicing and fruit is, exploding against the wall of my room, it stays there or it comes down like I had thrown an actual piece of fruit. Now I know it's cartoon, but the combination of there's your augmented reality was amazing. Like, and I had a door on the side that was partially open, and it would hit it where the door was, not just as if it were a flat door. And so obviously whoever they programmed it was taking all your environment around and incorporating it into the game in a seamless way that really made it feel alive. And the colors they used made it a lot of fun. And you were surrounded, so you could turn around, you'd see different parts of the game all around you. So this was my first virtual gaming kind of experience. I mean, you could say in a sense like going to Disney World, right? They've got some of those rides. It's kind of like that in a way, because you're immersed, but you never actually have to get on a track and wear whatever. It was really cool, and I was surprised. And again, there are games I play, but they tend to be more, most of I used to play Pokemon all the time. Now that might be a game that would bring me back in if it was truly immersive.
Used to?
Yeah, 2 years ago I gave it up cold turkey.
Oh no. Well, just wait.
A lot of grief
just
about that.
wait for the Vision Pro version of that, and you'll be right back into it again.
I'm sure I would be, right?
Yeah.
And that would be really cool. But the Super Fruit Ninja is definitely one that I'm like, again, I look forward to playing it, and it's like that excitement is there. And now I have to choose, I only have so many hours in the day. Do I want to watch a movie or YouTube videos? And I'll use that as a quick entree into my third app. YouTube and Google in general are being a little bit silly, in my opinion, about not making their iPad apps compatible. Now,
and Netflix.
Google has said, at Netflix and Spotify, Google has said it's on the roadmap. Okay.
Right.
And the reason I found out it wasn't just YouTube. Like Google Calendar doesn't work. It's just not available. I mean, I could do it on the web, but the native app on the iPad isn't there. I'm like, why? That frustrated me. So I'm guessing there was a directive at the moment just to not make them compatible. But you're giving opportunities to other developers to do something. And there was a Reddit app called Apollo that was outstanding. Unfortunately, Reddit made some changes to their API calls that made it prohibitively expensive for the author, Christian Selig, to continue supporting this. So he had to shut down that app. He said, what else could I do? So he created a YouTube app that would take the look and feel of the Apple Vision Pro interface, glassy feel, and make, the targets more appropriate for, grabbing in the virtual environment. It's called Juno, Juno.
I've heard of that. Yeah.
Yep. It's a one-time charge of $5, which I think is well worth it, just for the integration that he's made between the YouTube API and the Apple Vision Pro. Now, of course, there's always risk that YouTube could try to yank the API, but it doesn't seem like it from what he's saying, because it's not. There's a lot of technical background into it, but it created an environment to watch YouTube videos that I enjoyed much more so than the web version. And I'm like, cool. Again, he sees an opportunity. I don't know if someone told me he made like $5,000 in the first day just for all the new users who wanted a YouTube app.
Yeah.
Good for him. And it's my go-to YouTube watching. But it's not just that app. It's the ability to watch YouTube videos or any, Vimeo or other apps if I get an email and it's like an embedded link or something, I'm like, you know what? I'm going to let that sit. When I go to my Vision Pro later, or maybe I'll just put it on right then and there. I much prefer watching any video on the Apple Vision Pro. It's that kind of style and change of how I consume these things that is changed.
Let me ask you this. That brings up an interesting point because one of the articles I read about the Vision Pro mentioned that for folks who typically watch their movies or their TV shows or videos on an iPad or an iPhone or just a smaller screen in general,
Mm-hmm.
this is an incredible, forgive the pun, upscaling of experience when you
Mm-hmm.
go to the Vision Pro. But for those who have a big screen TV in their home, like a 55, 60 plus inch TV, it doesn't feel that different.
Yeah, and I think if you're watching most traditional videos that have been produced, or television shows, or even movies, I think that is quite an apt statement. I think the 3D effect is one that I mean, I don't know. I know there are 3D screens
Yeah,
out
but
there,
it's
but
not the same. It's not the
right.
same. Yeah.
So that's one thing. And the other part is it's a solo experience. I mean, you can do things with other people, those Vision Pros, but really the Vision Pro is kind of you're by yourself watching something. And I know Apple is pitching this, like one guy's watching the new, I forget what it's called, Masters of the Air or whatever. Um, and you can see his partners in the room, but they're doing their own thing on their phone. And there's the commercial where the guy's in the kitchen and his kid kicks a soccer ball to him. And obviously you can see through it. That part works well. It's certainly a fast real time, but that's weird to me. It's a little cringy. Now, maybe over time it'll become more acceptable. I still would be kind of uncomfortable doing a lot of stuff if I'm with friends or family.
Yeah.
And it really feels like I'm excluding them. And yes, they can see my eyes and it's fine. But for me here, because I have an apartment in San Francisco that's relatively small, my TV screen's small because I don't
Hmm.
have that much space. This is perfect for this type of environment. Back in Chicago, watching on a larger screen, especially with the family, yeah, I'm not going to be using Vision Pro. At least I don't see myself doing it in that for that reason.
I think you just answered one of the questions I had written down here. I'm going to ask it anyway, and maybe your answer is a little bit different, but I think you pretty much just answered it. One of the things mentioned in the articles I've read was something that I said when the Vision Pro was debuted last summer, and that it's an isolating or appears to be an isolating experience. That according to the author of this article, who was using it, he wrote, using the Apple Vision Pro is like putting on a pair of headphones. Once it's on, you are isolated, you are immersed, and you are lonely. Now, lonely seems, I don't know if that's quite an apt word to use, but that's the words that he used.
Sure.
So it doesn't sound like it's really ready to be embedded in a situation. And this is, I think, what you just said, where we can naturally interact with friends and family, and I presume coworkers. Now, I know we've seen a lot of in the wild photos and videos of the Vision Pro being used in what seem to be wildly absurd situations. But I suppose I should ask, since you've had it for a week now, have you used it in public and have you wandered into a Starbucks to order tea with yours yet?
I haven't done the Starbucks piece. I have walked around the area with it, and I have brought it downtown. But San Francisco's a bit of an outlier in the sense that everybody here is probably either working for or supports, Silicon Valley in some fashion, and it's natural. It's no one really questioned it. I mean, a couple of people looked over, and I've seen videos of people in other cities where everybody's taking videos of the person that's
Right.
wearing the Vision Pro. But out here, I mean, it's just you see it. I don't want to say everywhere, but I see them every day if I'm downtown. Just that's what people seem to be doing. Now it's a little, I think it's a combination. It's new. They want to see what the experience is like. Maybe they want
Yeah.
to show off that they have one. I don't know. But for me right now, haven't, other than just right around my place here, I'm not going to really take it around unless the experience of taking the spatial videos is that much better. I haven't seen it that dramatically different yet, but I haven't done that much. So that's a bit different. Uh, I don't. I mean, lonely is so subjective. I've never felt that I was lonely. Isolated, yes, but that's my choice.
Yeah.
I do think that there will be areas of work that this will be more or less accepted. I don't know if commonplace is the right word for that, but I work in a research organization that I immediately see the possibilities because I watch the scientists have massive screens, imaging of whatever they're working on, spreadsheets, databases, whatever. But they've got
Yeah.
to have 2, 3 monitors. Here, you could potentially have everything in front of you, and you could get actually doing an experiment on an instrument at the same time as having that data. Because, again, how it's managed is a different story, but you're in a lab. It's not, we don't have clean rooms per se in most cases, but you could be in a research lab that's open, but you don't typically bring in computers. You don't have a lot of space for large monitors. Now you can, instead of having it, here's my data, bring it back to my office, do the stuff there, go back, try something else. You could incorporate this as part of your workflow. That's where I see a tremendous amount of opportunities. And that's just in one, you know, area of science that I think it could be really beneficial. And of course, that's the question I'm being asked now is like, oh, hey, how do we get one for work? And I'm like, there's other factors of, privacy and other things that we have to work through. But it's early, and I think it's great that they're interested, and I want to lead the charge to see how the enterprise environment could take this from what is now mostly a home use product to bring it into the workplace.
I think opportunity is the perfect word to describe the Vision Pro's potential. Because
Mm-hmm.
as we mentioned earlier, it's limited to one screen. If you want to hook it up to your Mac, you get one screen.
Right.
You can't do that report style. A dozen screens in front of you, all being fed by your Mac. If your Mac were capable of even doing that, so that leads me to the question: what's missing from the Vision Pro? Now that you've used it for a week, do you feel like there's anything that isn't there that should be or could be, or that you hope will be there in a future software update?
I think we talked a little about things like personas, but that isn't a big deal to me. I think what I'd like to see is better integration with some other apps. Now, Microsoft's done a very nice job. They've released Teams and their Office suite, so that one's already there. I'd like to see some of these other apps come out. But I'm I've done the connect to the Mac piece, so I've got the large Mac screen, and it's impressive. For one thing, whatever the Mac is doing, it's displayed in essentially real time in front of me. However they're doing that magic is done really well. And
Yeah.
that way I can use my keyboard and trackpad, and it's very productive in that respect. But I have a nice screen here, and for that type of work, the Vision Pro isn't compelling to put it on and change that mode versus what my screens are here. If I can get better use of a keyboard in some fashion, whether it's virtual and I haven't had the chance to do a Bluetooth connection yet, so that's on me. Um, that might be compelling to make it my primary device. I go back to what I said about the iPad. Great device when I first got it, but I wasn't seeing it for work or anything at that point.
Yeah.
Now, every meeting I go to, most of the day in the office, that's my primary driver because they added the capability of its own keyboard case, trackpad if you like that. I prefer the touch.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
So I'm curious to see where this could go. And if they build in, maybe it's better hardware compatibility, or maybe it's just also me learning how to better use Siri. But if I think about a spreadsheet, what do I say? Go to cell A1 and then formulas.
Yeah, it would
It,
work. It would
it
work.
would work. It's
Yeah.
just not as quick. But I think there are other aspects that I'm just about to scratch the surface and using something like Keynote, where you can practice in the Steve Jobs Theater in
That
Cupertino.
would be pretty cool, wouldn't it?
Right. And so that could be, and then maybe it's a hybrid, right? I do some of the work on the Mac, but then I really polish it inside the Vision Pro. So when I'm actually ready to present, I'm there. So just like many pieces of Apple, they're very complementary to each other. I'm not looking to replace my Mac. I love my Mac. I'm not looking to replace my iPad. I love that too. Although that probably has seen the most dramatic drop of usage because I only have so many hours in the day. And I
Right.
do love to read. And my iPad was always my reading device. Now I'm finding that certain long form articles, I use Fiery Feeds as my RSS reader. And it's just an iPad app. It's not been converted. But it's very easy to select an article and then just read it and scroll with your fingers. It's kind of cool. And I'll just sit down on my couch and just spend a half an hour catching up on news articles or sports or tech. And that's a fun environment to do it again. And again, I can, if there's a video embedded, I'll just copy it and put it into Juno and watch it. And then that experience is much better than even the large iPad screen, which is only 13 inches. So there's definitely been a shift in how I use certain apps as well.
Very cool. Very cool. One, and we don't have to get very far into this, but one limitation I was reading is something that we mentioned earlier in the show, and that's that it's not really a shareable device. Ben Thompson on Stratechery, I hope I'm pronouncing that correctly, wrote
I
that
think so.
the Vision Pro isn't just experienced in isolation, it can only really be used by one person. A Vision Pro, like all iOS based devices, doesn't support multiple user accounts.
Mm-hmm.
Apple, though, he writes, obviously wants people to be able to try the Vision Pro, so there is an option for guest user session. And then he goes on to describe how really problematic that is when it comes right down to it, that you can enter a guest mode session, but you have a certain amount of time that you got to get out your lenses and hand it over to the person. Then they need to calibrate it with their hands. And oh my gosh, don't even think about lifting it off your face because then it resets the guest mode and you got to start with your hand calibration all over again. It sounds like there might be some room for improvement in terms of making it a shareable device, at least amongst family members.
Yeah, I think that's one. It's a tough call. Again, it goes back to the faces. You're going to have different light shields and the inserts.
Yeah.
And so it would be nice if you had some level of profiling so you could say, this is Barry, this is Ren, this is Mike. And you could really make the experience based upon the Apple ID. And
Yeah.
potentially you could even say, do you want this to mirror my iPhone setup or my iPad setup or my Mac? I'm not sure how much they want to push that. It's definitely something I think they should continue to investigate because it isn't, something that when I bring it over to people, I just say, just put it on, follow the prompts, but they could in theory be reading my emails or my messages. It's not a big deal, but it's a little awkward. So I usually just say, hey, go to the dinosaur immersive experience. And that, 5 minutes later, they're like, wow, that was amazing. Right. And so it gives them a little taste of it, but I'm not really sure, to your point, Mike, and I think it's a valid one, is you're not going to want to buy 2, 3, 4 of these for your family. I mean, that's the cost of a car or car down payment at least.
Yeah, a little bit.
Yeah. So it is going to be curious what that happens. So again, I go back to the runway of potentially 10 years. In 10 years from now, the size of the thing, probably like putting on Ray-Bans or something, and you're still going to have to deal with the light issue, I suppose. It might be more of a wraparound style. But if it's reasonably priced, now what's reasonable to Apple? I don't know, $1,000. Then I
Yeah.
can see this being more mass market. It's going to be a while.
Vision Pro Nano.
Yeah, right. SE. So, but
Okay,
I think
go
they
ahead.
have
I'm
that
sorry.
in their roadmap. Yeah.
Yeah, yeah. All right, let's wrap up our Vision Pro discussion here with something that we touched on earlier, and that is, where do you see the Vision Pro sitting in the lineup of your typical home user. As you mentioned, it's not really quite yet there for enterprise. I'm sure it's being used in enterprise.
Sure.
But where do you see it sitting in the lineup of the typical home user? What is the best use case scenario for a Vision Pro in 2024? And is that something that's ready for everyone? Or
I don't. Yeah.
are we still in that early honeymoon phase where early adopters like you are telling Apple where to take it?
Yeah, we're definitely early days, and it's which is fun, right? You get to see course corrections, you hopefully input from the users and developer community. My general feeling is if you spend time by yourself watching TV or doing things, or you live by yourself, you live in a smaller place. Say you are, you're young out of college, you got a job down in New York, so you can only afford a small apartment with three other people that you barely know. This device is ideal because then you can isolate yourself
Ah, yeah,
and
good point.
experience something. But if you live in, suburban Chicago and you have, rooms that you have relatively large TV screens and you have family members around, then it's more of a nice to have. And you really would have to define the use cases. If you're a fan of 3D movies, it, there's no question this is the device for you. But if you're like, I enjoy watching the occasional YouTube video and stuff, it's harder to make that argument because of the cost, the weight, and it's still a new environment that's learning how to be operated on. It's one of the nice things about the iPad and the iPhone is it's tactile because you're touching the screen and things react to it.
Hmm.
I'm in the middle of nowhere trying to grab things, and that's good. It's really good, but it's not perfect. I've sometimes had to retap 2 or 3 times, and I don't know why. And things will occasionally lock up. Juno did this once or twice, and there's a way to force quit an app, which, by the way, if you hold on both buttons at the top, it'll bring a menu,
why,
and that's
why does that
fine.
make why does that make me laugh? Thinking of someone pressing down both buttons at the same time. That's fun.
And it's jarring because you get immersed into the environment, and all of a sudden the screen pops up. It's like, whoa, what's happening?
Yeah.
The flip side of that, though, is it's spatially aware because when you create these screens, they kind of lock into place in your environment. So I can have a giant screen, and then if I leave, I can move it outside of my field of vision, turn, and I like see the edge of it, like it's just a huge pane of glass sitting in my house. And I'm like, it really kind of messes with your mind because it's like I see it, but it's not there, kind of a thing. But it's neat. It's one of those things that I'm just fascinated by the technology because it's doing several things, right? It's displaying a massively high resolution image. It knows I've moved away from it. It's locked into place. So it's not like head bobbing as I move. It's rock solid. All these little pieces, goes back to what you're saying about this, the whole ecosystem being the killer app. It is really impressive. But if those things aren't, you're like, eh. If you, again, I get the enjoy of new tech. I
Hmm.
obviously enjoy the Apple ecosystem. So for me, this is perfect. I think a lot of people probably should wait. Let those that are willing to deal with the bugs, who are, you know, enjoy tech for tech's sake. This is probably where most people will be. But I do see a lot of people wanting to experience VR, AR, VR in this environment. And this, from what I gather, is by far the best experience out there. So I think we'll get some combination of them moving in. I think other challenges what you'll have is if you have younger children, you don't want them bouncing, breaking the device. Obviously, it can happen, but they might get frustrated if they're like, "Oh, hey, I want to watch. I'm 6, 8 years old. And I want to watch something on the thing. And mommy, daddy's using it, and it's not a shareable device, like you're saying, Mike."
Right.
I think that could also create some possible contention. So that might be also a reason to hold off until Gen 2, Gen 3 size, price, and so forth changes.
Well, not only is it not a shareable device, but if I'm not misunderstanding, I also don't think you can have shared experiences. So if you have two or three people in a room, you can't all be watching the same movie simultaneously. Or am I wrong on that?
You sort of can. I mean, you can share what you're seeing out to, say, a Mac. So, if I put it on, I could, you could see what I'm seeing, but you're not going to experience the depth, and you're only going to see what I'm seeing. What is interesting is if you're doing a FaceTime call, one of the options is to share your screen to the other Vision Pro user. So I was talking to DJ George, and I didn't even know this was an option. All of a sudden, I'm seeing what he's seeing, and I was like, "Whoa, what is this?" He's like, "That button up here shares my view to you." So through my Apple Vision Pro, I'm seeing his Apple Vision Pro, which was showing an external view of his office. That was really unexpected and also cool because the quality is good enough that he was able to give me a tour, and he's got a lot of cool Star Wars stuff. So in a sense, there is a shared experience that you can have using things like FaceTime. So capabilities of other apps to take advantage of that, be curious to see where it goes. Maybe at some point down the road, you can have it much more like, hey, everybody in the family, if you have 4 Vision Pros, can all see each other and do a lot more cool things together. Gaming, perhaps.
Well, I was wondering if you
Um,
could all watch a 3D movie together.
oh, kind of like SharePlay.
Kind of
Here's
like
what I
SharePlay.
found.
Oops,
Oh,
that was my Siri. Yeah, kind of like
I don't.
kind of
Yeah, I
like
don't
SharePlay.
know.
But if
I'll
you
have
have
to.
as weird as this is to think about, three people sitting on a couch, all with their Apple Vision Pros on, all
Right.
watching the same
Same.
3D movie.
I'm not aware of that yet,
Yeah.
but I wouldn't be surprised since you've got the SharePlay capabilities today on a FaceTime call to watch movies together, which works pretty darn well. It really wouldn't be a stretch to push that to the Vision Pro. Guessing that wasn't, unless I'm missing it, I guessing it's not quite on day one roadmap for Apple.
Okay, one last thing for those who are watching the live stream. Would you like to show yours off?
I can. I wish I should have tried to figure out how I could like show my screen, but so I've got the solo knit loop on here. So the nice thing is when you first put it on, the first thing it does is an optical ID check, which is kind of like Face ID or Touch ID. So it knows it's me. And, I'm too close to my display. I don't know what that is. So I can see myself on the screen because I'm using the Mac to do the podcast. I can see my microphone. And so that's cool, right? That I can actually see outside my environment. But I also have screens on here that I can see. And I could also tune you out if I want to change the environment, right? Now I'm in the Joshua Tree. It's like I said, it's pretty remarkable. And I think over time, I don't really think about putting on as much. I used to, kind of futz around with it and change different settings. And I think in general, it's pretty good. Now you're zooming in on me. I'm trying. I might have too much glare coming from my window to see my eyes. Can you see anything?
No, I don't see your eyes. No.
Yeah, I think that's one that Apple kind of implied a little bit better visibility in their ads because you could really see their eyes. Again, it's cool because you can see me blinking in real time, but they're obviously not my real eyes. They're, I think what they call them, reticular lenses or something. So it gives it kind of a 3D effect.
And what's
But
interesting is not only are we not seeing your real eyes, but when you are looking at us or you're looking at your desktop, you're also not seeing the real desktop. You're seeing
correct.
a video projection of that desktop
Right.
through the screens of the Vision Pro. It's very,
Yeah. And
very interesting, techie, nerdy kind of concept to think about that, how it's all really working.
yeah. And it's, in a sense, it's remarkable. I mean, is it as crisp as looking at it without the glasses? No. But the speed of which it processes and displays it is essentially real time. I don't feel any lag. So if I'm, need to mouse or keyboard or something like that, I don't feel anything like it's projected and there's a delay. It's real time, making that part of the productivity great. What is a little weird, and I'm sure because it's the Vision Pro beaming it, I feel a greater sense of 3D between my microphone right here and the screen. I don't think about the depth when I'm just working, but it gives a little bit of a weird shimmy, like spatial effect. I'm not sure how to describe it because it's the image being beamed into my eyes.
Wow, that's pretty cool.
But
Pretty cool.
yeah, it's again, we all know it's a first generation product. There are challenges with the weight and things that not everybody's going to like, and the cost certainly is a factor, but it is one heck of a cool product. And it sounds kind of silly, but I'm glad I was around to see this because it is remarkable. And it is something that I truly enjoy using every day.
Oh, that's very cool. Thanks so much for sharing that, Barry. That was really, you can read as many articles as they can feed you in any given day, but it's a lot different to actually have that conversation with someone and be able to ask the questions and say,
Sure.
"Hey, how does this really work?" Not just how did this author experience it, but how did you experience it, and what kind of issues did you have? And so I really appreciate you coming on and sharing that.
Oh yeah. Yeah. And obviously, you know, happy to answer questions if anybody wants to hit me on Mastodon, which is one of my Fulk at friendsofdesoto.social. I'll have to send that to you for a
That,
link.
that sounds about right.
A lot of people can, you can email me at Barry at formaceyesonly.com. But it's also hard to explain some of this without actually putting one on. So
Yeah.
I assume Apple's still doing demos, or just go to your Apple store and try to get one. It's worthwhile. It's just, again, I didn't have any real expectations. It's exceeded just about all of them. And again, I'll go back to the word I keep using. It's the joy of this device that is really neat.
Now, before we wrap this episode up, I kind of sprung this on you earlier. In earlier January, I guess it was, we did our annual Essential Apps episode, which was a little inappropriately named because we often did it in December and we haven't really been doing it annually, but we did our annual episode in January. And then we said, hey, we have so many apps to talk about that we're going to just keep introducing new essential apps every episode through the rest of the year. Or at least that's the plan. We'll see what actually happens. But I asked you, do you have any essential apps that you would like to share with folks? And you said, yes. Yes, I do, Mike. So I said, all right, why don't we have you present your essential app this week, Barry, and
Sure.
tell us what that is.
So in a sense, it is an app, but it's an app of apps. So what it is something called Setapp. And it's a platform that is subscription based, which I know can turn off people. But what it is they work with developers, typically smaller ones, to allow you to pick apps out of their catalog and use them for one set price, whether you use one of them or 100 of them, same price every month, or you can pay yearly. And we all have a bit of subscription fatigue. Mike, we go back to what you were saying about Evernote. And I was always resistant to use Setapp because I'm like, well, here's one more app that's asking for subscription. What's the value? So it is something that I really want to talk a little bit about looking at the catalog and seeing it can actually save you some money. And so when I started going down that path, Spark was probably the first example because Spark has kind of changed their model. And when they put out version 2, they were looking at certain other features and they were charging premium. And I'm like, man, it's hard to go from a free app to a paid app that I was not getting any new functionality. Yes, happy to support the authors, but I'm like, it's kind of a mail app. And then I started looking when I saw that Spark was an option and there was a couple others. I'm like, wait a second. I use default folder X. I needed a good screen capture app. I was like, the built-in one's fine, but I needed something I could do like scrolling long windows. I think it was Allison Sheridan that mentioned Clean Shot X that was on Setapp. That was actually my gateway
Allison
in.
loves Clean Shot X. Yeah.
Yeah. I was a fan of Text Expander, great app. They're not here, but they have one called Rocket Typist. That's really good too. I'm like, okay, switch. I feel a little bad for the text expander folks. They should get back in here. What else do I have on there? Clean
I
My
know
Mac X.
Busy Cal's in there too.
Yep, BusyCal, iStat menus, Pathfinder, which is a replacement for Finder. In fact, I've always used Pathfinder from the early days, um, and I was happily paying them. But it was like, well, I can get them through Setapp, so I can save the money from paying them directly. Hopefully, they get a reasonable amount through Setapp. They have a great copy paste editor called Paste. And then there's AirBuddy, which just tells me about my Bluetooth devices. But I've got 10 apps that I'd be spending a lot more. So Setapp is really been that kind of killer app for me that I really enjoy. And they will send you, hey, there's new apps or there's updated versions of these apps. They highlight, they're really trying to promote some of these new independent developers. I've been playing with AI through them. There's some really cool photo retouch tools that are there. And I don't have a large need for some of these, but those one-offs, oh, cool. I can download Touch Retouch, remove something off the screen, go right, back to the photo. So that's why this app I've been really impressed with, and the support has been really good. And they have different levels of subscriptions based upon the number of devices. They have family plans. So, they have, I think, the appropriate number of subscriptions based upon your use case. So that is my app.
It's kind of the essential app of essential apps is really what
Yeah.
you've presented to us. You've just presented our next annual essential apps with Setapp.
There you go.
Yeah, that's a great choice. That's a great choice. And it's,
Thanks.
I'll say that the folks from Setapp were at Macstock in 2019. Wonderful people. Absolutely great to get to know them. And just from the apps that are in there alone, as you said, you can easily make up, if not get ahead of that annual subscription fee versus buying them all separately.
Absolutely. And like I said, the support has been great. And you want to see that. And, there's talk of them even like, okay, how do we do this for the Vision Pro? I'm like, let's see. That would be really cool.
That would be really cool. That would be real cool. Thanks, Barry. Well,
thanks, Mike.
with that said, that is going to do it for this episode of For Mac Guys Only. I hope everyone enjoyed it. Remember, I do love to get your letters, so if you have any comments about the show, a tip to share, a software or hardware problem with your Mac, be sure to leave your comments in this week's show notes found at formacguysonly.com, or drop me a line, mike@formacguysonly.com. And be sure to subscribe to the show's YouTube channel at youtube.com/FMEOTV. And you can click that little notification bell so you can find out when we are going live. You can join the chat room like Martine and James and Brett and Brian were in there today. And you can catch all the behind the scenes stuff that doesn't make the final cut of the show. Hey, Barry, what's the best way for folks to get a hold of you?
I'd say probably just like you, just email me at barry@formaceyesonly.com. I don't spend a lot of time on social media like I used to for a variety of reasons, but I do like Mastodon. It's probably the best place. I think I'm going to have to verify it. I think it's FulkB at friendsofdesoto.social. That is a Mastodon instance that is based upon a bunch of Star Trek geeks. So it's a very fun and safe place to hang out. And see you there, I hope.
Yeah, definitely. And I think you are correct on that because I actually added you when I made the announcement this morning. So yes, FulkB. It's always FulkB.
Yes,
but I'm pretty sure it's
pretty much everywhere. I mean, I'm on Instagram. I hang out on Threads. I do not use the place formerly known as Twitter. That one I am off on.
Yeah. You won't find me there anymore either. Anyway, thanks so much for listening, everyone. Thanks to Barry for joining me this episode. Stay subscribed, and we'll talk to you next time. Okay, Barry, now you have to fill Eric's shoes and you have to say, cue the music.
All right. Mike, cue the music.
And before I do, bye everyone in the chat room. I'm looking over here because that's where I see you.
Ah.
All right. Cue the music. Cueing music.